Once the tinnitus sets in, then it's usually not long after that that the ringing in the ears becomes voices in the head.
Today we're going to talk about mental health. The World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. Good mental health is a lot more than not being sick.
LookoutfaCharlie. This is not normal.
Alright, let's talk about a couple things. Somebody asked, why do you keep talking about, these shills, moles, and trolls when, most of the people on your channel agree with you? Why even pay attention to that? And I can't keep explaining this, but I find shills, moles, and trolls very, very interesting. It's a very interesting subject, and it's not just my channel. It's lots of people's channels out there. I like to watch the shills, moles, and trolls on Corbett's channel, what they say and what they do. The thing is, when you study this, you study their weak points, you study what they are afraid of, and the message and the narrative that they are trying to push, and you learn a lot about them. There is a method to the madness. And when you understand who they are, what they're doing, and why they're doing it, it's very important research, because it lets you into the mind of the enemy. It is a window into the mind of the enemy. So it's very important, and it shouldn't just be ignored, and it's not just my channel alone. And again, I can't keep explaining this forever. It should be obvious why this should be talked about. I would also like to say that I try to keep this channel as street as possible so that anybody who is interested in this subject can tune in and listen. Some people have been asking questions, why don't you talk about this, or why don't you talk about that? There's a lot of things on this channel that I believe that I don't talk about because I can't prove it. And if I can't prove it, I don't talk about it. I may talk about a theory here and there, but generally, unless I can prove it's there and prove it exists, I avoid it. And I give that advice to other people out there. If you can't prove it, leave it alone, even if you believe it. Generally, if I'm talking about something that I can't prove, I will say that, this is a theory, or this is what I believe, but this can't be proven. So, if you're doing this kind of material, you should stay in the realm of what you can prove. Now, let's talk about frequency. People have wondered how you can modulate frequency, or how you can manipulate frequency. Let's talk about frequencies that are already there, like the Schumann Resonance, which is the Earth's frequency, and it is generally 7.83 hertz. It's a frequency that you can't hear. It's an ELF frequency. All frequencies pretty much follow the same rules. So you can manipulate a frequency by adding a frequency. Now, the 7.83 hertz Schumann Resonance used to have slight fluctuations to it. It did not, and never did, have all the fluctuations that it has now. They have been monitoring the Schumann Resonance for a long time, and these new fluctuations that people talk about as though they've always been there have not always been there. There have been slight fluctuations, not huge fluctuations. So I'm going to show you with real frequencies how frequencies can be manipulated. Again, you cannot hear the Schumann Resonance. It is out of human hearing range. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to use a frequency that we can hear, that is going to represent something like the Schumann Resonance or your 60 hertz electricity. I'm going to use 416 hertz because you can hear it, and I did not want to use the 440 hertz range. I wanted to use something else. So let's check out 416 hertz. Now that's just a steady frequency. You can see here that it does not jump up and down. It is just steady. Now how do we subvert that frequency? We add frequencies to it, just like the Schumann Resonance is being subverted. So here I'm going to add 416.46 hertz. Just a little bit off. Let's see what happens. So by adding that frequency, the volume of both frequencies starts to modulate. It's jumping up and down. Now let's add 415 hertz. and it starts to speed up. And it starts to modulate. Let's add 414 hertz to that mix. So, if you wanted to subvert the Schumann resonance and the Earth's frequency, you would add frequencies to it. Use the Earth's frequency as a carrier wave. So let's add 413 hertz to that whole mix. And it begins to fluctuate. Now let's add 412 to that as well. All very close, very similar frequencies. And you are getting massive volume fluctuations, and it begins to modulate. Now, let me show you something very, very, very important. Here is my voice from earlier in the video. Now, let's talk about frequency. People have wondered. So, what I did with this whole area was I just isolated 400 hertz to 416 hertz. Let's check it out. That's my voice, just 400 hertz to 416 hertz. Now, let's take that and let's add it to this, and then let's isolate just 416 and my voice. Now, if you did this with 3 other frequencies of that voice, just 3, you could create what sounds like a sine wave voice or sine wave speech. Now, imagine you hijack the resonance and you put out ads for McDonald's or whatever you want all the time. This doesn't just stop at the Schumann resonance. There's a lot of different things that can be done. Here is 60 hertz, and this is what your power is running off of. Kind of sounds like what an amplifier would sound like with nothing plugged into it and just the 60 hertz humming along. Now, let's add 59 hertz to that. Just 1 hertz off from it. Now let's add 58. Now let's add 57. 56. 55. Now 50. Now, if you put voices, just like I showed you in the 416 hertz range, if you did voices with frequencies, you could do the exact same thing. So, with frequency subversion and taking over frequencies, you don't have to take over the entire frequency band. You can merely add frequencies to it. It's that simple. This is a simple way of looking at how to subvert a signal that is out there. So if somebody is using 2.4 gigahertz or something else like Bluetooth, you could match frequencies very close to that and basically subvert that frequency range as it exists without messing with the actual frequency itself. It's very complicated and it's very simple at the same time. If you look at it that way, it is so simple that anybody can get it, as street as possible. Now, this is exactly how you would use the Schumann resonance or 60 hertz electricity as a carrier wave, or Wi-Fi, or any frequency can be used as a carrier wave, and you could add frequencies to that. So let's use 60 hertz electricity and my voice from earlier. Let's use that, and then let's use 60 to 70 hertz from my voice, just those bands. 50 to 55, and 1 higher frequency. And let's put it together, and let's see what we get if we were to subvert 60 hertz electric power. what do you know? There's voices there. Now, you don't even have to incorporate the whole voice. And eventually, if somebody heard this for long enough, if you had to sit in a room and just listen to this, you would begin to distinguish words from it. And it would only take me another half an hour to put together a set of frequencies that would create a completely and totally audible voice. You could put together a very audible voice that could subvert and ride on 60 hertz electricity or the Schumann Resonance. It's that simple. This can be understood by anybody. Just by adding frequencies to an already existing frequency, you can subvert it and make it modulate. You can almost create words from that alone. And once again, the best example of that is 416 hertz because it is so audible. And then by adding frequencies to it, the closer you get to the core frequency, the slower the modulation is going to be. The further you get away from that frequency, 416 down, let's say 412, the faster the modulation is going to be. And then the more frequencies you add, the more modulation you're going to have. So subversion of frequencies is very easy, especially the Schumann Resonance, because it is ELF and ELF cannot be stopped. It is like putting tissue paper in front of a semi. It can go through anything, where a higher frequency cannot travel as far and through as many solid objects. It's just like when you hear bass from a car. You don't hear the hi-hats or anything else from the music, you just hear the bass. And that's because the bass is low frequency and it's traveling further. It's very easy to understand if you look at it this way. And that's it for now. Look out for Charlie.
Come on, do Nazi stuff.
Look out for Charlie.